Hello everyone and welcome. I had the privilege of joining the Western Automotive Journalist 2017 track day at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, where I was able to test out some of the latest and most capable cars from many different manufacturers. This video is dedicated to discussing how these vehicles perform on a track, and does not necessarily speak to their on-road friendliness. I will also be showing lap times, but know that this is not a competitive event, it's an event for evaluation, so I'll be braking very conservatively and am far from a professional race car driver at that. There are plenty of variables that affect the lap times, including traffic from other drivers, whether the tires and brakes were cold, warm, or too hot once I got out on the track from the previous driver, and of course my own skill level. So, disclaimers aside, we'll discuss 4 of the cars that I was most impressed by on the track, and then 4 of the cars where my expectations were quite different than how I actually felt driving them on the track. My most enjoyable drive of the day was in the Alfa Romeo Giulia 4-leaf Clover version. And I do promise that I don't consider this the best purely because it's the newest and perhaps the most exotic car here. It's genuinely an amazing machine on the track. Of all the cars I drove, it was easily one of the most balanced, inspiring great confidence at nearly any speed. Under the hood is a twin-turbo 2.9-liter 90-degree V6 engine producing 505 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque, a potent 175 horsepower per liter. But it wasn't the most powerful car here, and it certainly wasn't the lightest car here. In fact, Alfa doesn't even list the weight of the car in their press kits, though Motor Trend weighed one in at around 3,800 pounds. Even with the weight, it was my fastest lap around the raceway, for which I purely attribute its balance and predictability to provide confidence for even a novice driver such as myself. In second place, we're in the Mazda MX-5 Miata RF, Mazda's latest hardtop convertible MX-5. This is the club version with an LSD and manual transmission. The RF adds a little over 100 pounds of additional weight, though dynamically it feels very similar to the soft top. The weight distribution is a perfect 50-50 split without a driver in the seat, with the weight shifted slightly back from the soft top. The car is an absolute joy to drive, with near perfect predictability and a highly approachable limit. If you decide to push the car too hard, letting off the throttle or brakes and a minor steering correction puts you right back on pace. I'd probably have given this car first place if it weren't for the fact that the steering wheel does not telescope and that my head, with helmet, was smashed against the ceiling for the track drive. Yes, I'm 6'1", but I don't think that's all that absurd of a height to fit in a modern car. My lap time was just slightly better than the BRZ and 86 Duo. Which conveniently brings us to our third and fourth cars, the Subaru BRZ and the Toyota 86 Twins. Both have a very similar dynamic feel to the MX-5, very balanced and predictable, easy to push hard, with just a bit more heft to pull around the track, but also a bit more power. While the tires aren't particularly graceful on a track, they like to oversteer, it's an insanely fun car to drive hard as it rewards drivers of all abilities to find the car's limits. The BRZ's performance package is also tremendous value, adding new shocks, 17-inch aluminum alloy wheels, and most importantly for track use, significantly larger Brembo brakes both front and rear, all for $1,200. That's a much better deal than Mazda's $3,400 Brembo and BBS package, which only provides Brembos on the front wheels, and there doesn't seem to be a significant size difference. For track days, the BRZ with performance package won't let you down, and will comfortably fit taller drivers. But perhaps the best thing about the 86 BRZ Duo is the steering feel. On track, the tight steering ratio rewards those who drive with precision and prevents your arms from crossing over in tight turns. For a modern vehicle, it provides some of the most valuable feedback through the steering wheel to your hands, and is part of what makes this car so easy and enjoyable to drive hard. There were, however, several cars which my expectations were far from reality on. The Jaguar FType SVR, Dodge Challenger TA, Fiat 124 Abarth Spider, and the Lexus LC500. Having driven the Jaguar F-Type SVR on the road, it is absolutely one of the most thrilling vehicles I've ever been in. That's why I was a bit surprised to not have quite the same feeling about it while driving on the track. It's not that it's not fun, it definitely is, but it's not the most well-behaved vehicle on the track, which is part of what I found exciting about it on the road. The balance is a bit twitchy, and the rear end never fully commits to a corner, even with all-wheel drive. On top of which, if you're too quick with your throttle application, the shock load of acceleration bounces up and down the driveline, kind of similar to driving a manual transmission car in first gear at super low speeds and letting on and off the throttle, just not quite as exaggerated. The car is absolutely phenomenal. It simply feels much better suited for the road than the track, which is fine since that's probably where most will be spending their time. The Dodge Challenger TA392, on the other hand, was surprisingly impressive. Every time I enter one of these cars, and I've driven numerous Challengers, I'm always expecting it to behave like a boat, the way the specs make it seem like it will. And yet every time I exit the car feeling quite impressed by how well behaved it is. With a 485 horsepower 6.4 liter V8 engine, 6 piston Brembos up front and 4 piston Brembos in the rear, a revised suspension geometry, and 275mm wide Pirelli performance tires, the car is actually quite at home lapping around a circuit. It was my third fastest car around the track for the day, and had me grinning as I rolled back into the staging area. Moving on to another member of the FCA family, the Fiat 124 Spider Abarth is one of the most fun vehicles you can buy for the money, yet somehow I was a little let down by how it felt on the track. It's not that it isn't near perfect, it truly is a remarkable vehicle, but yet I found myself having more fun in the MX-5 and BRZ 86 Duo. The only two real downfalls I have for the car, aside from once again I'm a bit too tall for it, is the shifting and the engine response. On the street, neither feel like an issue, but on the track, the manual shifter is noticeably more clunky than Mazda's all-new 6-speed box in the MX-5. Again, fine for the street, but just doesn't feel quite as smooth on the track. And as far as the engine, waiting for the tiny 1.4 liter engine to crank the boost all the way to 22 psi is a noticeable time delay. Don't think I'm saying it's not one of the best vehicles out here, and for the money, it's not even a question. But while I expected greatness from the rave reviews of this car on and off the track, I still left feeling like the MX-5 was the better buy. Now, as mentioned in a previous video, which I'll link in the description, I found the Lexus LC500 a bit of a disappointment, especially in comparison to the cheaper and significantly lighter Lexus GSF. Yes, the GSF is an F car and as such is better geared for a track. But if we're all being honest, Lexus's lineup in general doesn't make track machines, and the GSF is a luxury sedan far before it's a sports car. But not only does the GSF have the performance to take on the LC500, it's an amazing ride on the street as well, all at a lower price point. And while I do think the LC500 has a beautiful exterior, the GSF doesn't sacrifice on interior quality. As you can see, it's strikingly similar, and I think both are well executed luxury cars. Whether or not they belong on a track is debatable, but nonetheless, that's what I was here at this event to compare. If you're curious, here's a complete list of my lap times and cars that I actually recorded. Know that comparing these lap times directly doesn't make a ton of sense unless you analyze the whole lap. Some of the cars required being off throttle after turn 5 for a noise ordinance, sometimes I fell into traffic, sometimes drivers were passing me and I needed to give them space, and of course I was a bit more confident towards the end of the day, so the order which I drove the cars in matters quite a bit. I will also include videos of all of the laps on my second channel, Engineering Explained Extra, so if you're curious about any of the specific car laps, you can check them out there with data overlays and GPS loggers. A great example of how these lap times can be misinterpreted without context is by looking at my best MX-5 lap versus my best 124 Spider lap. Though the 124 was 3 seconds faster, it's because about 3 seconds were lost waiting in traffic at the beginning of my MX-5 lap. Once free, the cars had nearly identical lap times. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. As mentioned, all of the cars with lap times will have videos posted on my second channel, EE Extra, to check out if you're interested.